Hi, guys. Welcome. Happy Thursday. May the fourth be with you. I don't know if we have some Star Wars lovers in the house, but I thought it was only fitting to host a webinar with my friend Murray Voth here on the 4th. So, Star Wars enthusiasts, may the 4th be with you. I hope that you have watched Star Wars today or going to tonight. I wonder if that's a tradition people have, Murray. I'd be curious to know.
I think so. I haven't checked in with my kids today, but I know a couple of them used to be real fanatics, so we'll see. So yeah, as long as I'm not introduced as Darth Vader, I'm all good.
Too bad we don't have filters. Well,
Right.
guys, we are so glad you're here. If you're joining our AutoLeap monthly webinar for the first time, thank you for joining. The idea behind these webinars is to continuously provide the industry with thought leadership. With many different experts that we have in the industry, we do try to rotate our speakers so that you get different types of expertise, different thoughts from all the experts that we have our hands exposed to in this industry. And it is such a wonderful thing that we are able to provide to you. And so at the end, we do put a survey out. We will send you a $20 Amazon gift card. Your feedback is how we plan for these future webinars with topics, with speakers. You guys guide us on these, and so we love your feedback and we appreciate it. So please do make sure that you fill out that survey. Today's session is being recorded as always. We will do our best to get that out to you at the early next week. And so if you have to drop or if something's going on in the shop, please do not worry. We will get a recording to you so that you don't miss any of the conversation that we are having today. And regarding today, we have a topic on convenience and how to offer an excellent client experience with Murray Voth. A little bit about Murray. He has spent 20 years owning and operating service stations with repair bays. During that time, he took a lot of training and was part of 20-something groups. So if you don't know about those, haven't heard them, Murray is a great person to get connected with. We have his contact afterwards. He has his own company, RPM, which launched in 2018, and it's mastermind groups and his SMART course. So everything that he's going to talk about today and then more is what he does with his RPM training. Murray, I'm very excited to have you here. I always love connecting with you, seeing you in the industry. I know you are part of camp and you are very plugged in and making sure that the industry progresses forward and modernizes and that our shops are taken care of and growing their business as well. So thank you for joining me.
Oh, my pleasure to be here. And like you said, just helping shop owners reduce stress, get more profits, become masters of their destiny owning a shop. So many people are smart, they're working hard, they went into business with the right intentions, but they just don't seem to be getting the results that they're looking for. So that's my passion for this industry. So
well, if you want to kick off, we can
sure.
Go ahead.
Well, we're going to talk about client experience and customer client care. And I just wanted to start off by introducing some of my beliefs and philosophies around how to serve the automotive driving public in the best way. Now, of course, there's many opinions on this, but I'm going to give you my own. One of the things, a little background on me being a service station operator, and those of you that are old enough to remember the corner garage type scenario, we were the little heroes of the neighborhood. We were not even appointment based in my early years. People would drop in for an oil change or for a tire repair. We would do a timing belt. We would replace an engine. We would put air in the little kid's tricycle. We would pump up an inner tube for going to the lake. And it was just insane, right? Just the number of hours we put in doing that and serving our communities, which was great. But a lot of times we didn't make a lot of money because a lot of the stuff we did was free because we thought we had to, right? And over the years of transitioning from that service station world to the aftermarket independent world that we're part of, there's still this attitude out there by some of the driving public that they need to be able to wait for their appointment, right? And then there's this perception from the shop owners that they have to offer will wait appointments, that they have to be open in the evenings, that they have to be open in the weekends, that customers want access to their scheduler so they can plunk themselves in for that winter tire changeover. But you know what? There's a whole segment of the driving public that doesn't like that, doesn't want that. They want something different. But here's the weird thing. They only know what they want till they actually experience it. It's a really weird thing. They all of a sudden they're going like, oh, wow, I didn't know that a shop could do this for me. So that's sort of my intro, which then leads us into this idea of customer service versus client experience. Again, folks, I generally try to quote studies when I remember the studier, but there's a common one. You could probably even Google this. Businesses were surveyed. So this was generic businesses in North America were surveyed. 88% of these businesses surveyed thought they gave good. I'm a professional speaker, and my lips have worn out already, right? They think that they give good customer service, and then they survey the customers of those businesses, and only 8% felt like they received good customer service. So in my opinion, customer service, that big word that we talk about over and over and over again since the last 30, 40 years, is what we as businesses think customers want. What we need to find out is what the client wants to experience. And what we need to do is find out and sometimes we actually have to find out what their stresses are so that we can offer them what then is that solution for those stresses, right? So Amber's got on the screen here a study done in 2019. So this is pre-COVID. 60% of car owners would drive further for enhanced service, and 54% would pay more for enhanced service. So before we go into any more slides, Amber, and I know that we got a poll coming up here shortly, just let me elaborate on a couple of things before we do the poll. I said pre-COVID. So the reason why I say that is during COVID, in both of our countries, United States and Canada, automotive service was considered an essential service, meaning that we could legally be open and serve our clientele because it was an essential thing to keep transportation moving. Of course, different jurisdictions had different rules about how to do that, but most shops went to what they called a contactless service, right? Where we dropped off keys in some kind of a non-contact way. We picked up keys in a non-contact way. We communicated via email, text, and phone, right? And everything was done in a contactless way. You know what ended up happening within the first few months? All kinds of customers are like, this is fantastic. Why weren't you doing this before? But here's the thing. They didn't know what to ask for because they never thought that they could ask for that, right? So all of a sudden, people are like, I can drop off my car like anytime I want to. Yeah. I can pick it up anytime that's convenient for me. Yeah. Now, there's a little interesting glitch in that. So for the first while, and this is JD Power and Associates, by the way, did a small study during that period of time. I don't know if it was all of North America, but for sure they did it in Canada. And they found that up to 70% of people were loving that experience. And then as the pandemic kept going, all of a sudden that number came back down to 50, it came back down to 45. And we figured out why. Because it was essential service, we were one of the few legal places people could go to get human conversations, to get out of the house and talk. So they literally wanted to come back into the shop, not because they had any concern about transparency or the convenience or anything like that. They just wanted to talk to somebody, for goodness sakes, right, at the end of the day. So post-pandemic now, studies show that about 35 to 40% of consumers in North America love the contactless service. So that's kind of an introduction to this study that was done pre-COVID of what enhanced service is. So I think Rory's got a poll that she wants to run at this point, right?
I think too, it also brings up like when we really think about client experiences, right? And I think, you look at the model that Amazon took with Prime, right? And it's the next day or same day shipping. And then, it turns out that they then couldn't continue. And now when you get Prime, I order Prime and it comes 2 days later. So I expected, I didn't know that I wanted that level of experience, right? With getting my service right after. And now it's kind of like, you've exposed me to this thing and now you're not living up to it. It's just a fascinating phenomenon, what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
With experience.
Well, and now that you bring that up though, actually, before I say anything more, do we need to elaborate on the poll, Amber, at all?
So I'm going to just read it. So how do you rate your client's experiment? Or blah, I can't talk either, Murray.
So it's contagious.
Star Wars juju. how would you rate the client experience your shop provides? 1 being the best, 5 being the worst. So we've got about 33% of folks on saying that they're at a 2, right? So pretty good. And then you've got about 22% in the 4 to 5, which is interesting. That it could be better experience. I would love to know what you guys in the chat, what makes you think it could be better, or you're rating it at a 4 or 5. If you guys want to put that in, we'd love the commentary.
You notice that people are commenting that they misunderstood the order, so they were reading it too quickly. So I don't know if they're allowed to change their result or not.
Rory, I can relaunch poll. Let's try this again. There we go. Let's see if that works.
Okay, awesome. While people are doing that, now I've forgotten my train of
Amazon.
thought. So it's interesting. Like in the United States, the Prime service was really good, and even 2 days is better. In parts of Canada, we were hearing about this great service, and stuff was taking 2 weeks. And so, myself included, we're getting like mad at Amazon because they were promising things and so then again, lack of communication, lack of whatever. In fact, even one of the local, I'm in a small, very, very small town, one of the local delivery companies wouldn't deliver to our house because we're on a private lane. And we actually had to drive into the depot to pick up our stuff from Amazon, right? Now, they've found some new contractors in town, and so the stuff is delivered to our doorstep. But you're right, Amber, the expectations get set. And I think that's what a lot of people consider bad customer service. It's just not meeting expectations, right? So I've got to tell everybody listening, you know what we're going to do, folks? We're going to lower expectations big time, and then we're going to meet them and exceed them, right? Yeah. So, which reminds me, I got to tell everybody about Butterfield's Pancake House before we go on.
You have to. Well,
yes.
Let's go through this poll looks a little bit better, so I think I'm glad we relaunched it. So we've got about more than half of the folks on the webinar that are at a 2. So pretty good customer service overall. We do have a few that are still in the 4. So I had asked it previously, but if you're open to sharing what you think you could improve on or why you think that you're at a 4, I think that would be great, because, you know, something that you say, somebody else might spark the same kind of thought, right? And that's what is so beautiful about these kind of places that we're giving you guys to be able to talk to each other and throw ideas. And that's exactly what, when we go back to 20-somethings groups, that's the whole idea behind it, right?
Yeah.
To mentor each other through business growth.
Beautiful. So everybody, we had a chance we live up in Canada, pretty cold up here, and we got a chance to go to Arizona, Phoenix area in April for a bit of a vacation, which was lovely, and got to see my wife's an artist, so we got to go to some museums and some sculpturing places and stuff like that. So it was really cool to get away. However, we were staying at a pretty nice resort, but the service wasn't very good. The employees weren't very engaged. Service in the restaurants were extremely slow. The host or hostesses at the restaurant wouldn't even meet your eye. It just was not a very pleasant experience that way, right? And as I'm experiencing this, you know, I'm thinking to myself, you know, people are talking about a recession, or people are talking about how they can't find good people, and businesses are talking about how their people aren't working hard or aren't engaged, right? And so I'm thinking to myself, okay, that's probably the excuse this company is using, because I can definitely see that they've given up. Then we went out to Italian place that had these huge rankings. It was great fun, and you know, everything like that. And they were having trouble with their stoves, and everything was delayed, but they didn't communicate what was going on. Things just kept taking longer and longer and longer. There was no fresh bread brought out. There was no top up of drinks while you waited. There was very little communication, right? The salad came out quick, but then the rest of the stuff came out. And by the way, folks, almost every meal we had anywhere we went was lukewarm. And I'm kind of thinking, because of Uber Eats and those kind of companies, is everybody getting accustomed to lukewarm food these days? Like, what's wrong with a hot meal?
And lukewarm food. There you go.
Right? Like, why are we accepting that? We went to a Mexican place that we used to frequent pre-COVID when we went down, because we try to get down there every other year or so. And the floors were dirty. The black edge along the walls where the dirty mop was making, the upholstery was torn. Again, the food came out lukewarm. And so we were getting a little discouraged with what was going on. And so we Googled best breakfast near a certain museum. We were going to have brunch, and we found Butterfield's Pancake House. So any of you who live in the Phoenix, Mesa, Scottsdale area, They have 2 locations called Butterfields and one called Butters. You got to check this out. We are greeted. They have an app that they give you, they give you a note on your phone that you've been checked in. You can check your progress in terms of when your seating is going to be. They set expectations between 5 and 15 minutes, which I found interesting, right? It was kind of a big spread that they gave us. But we were seated relatively quickly. We were poured our water, offered coffee right away, offered cream or milk relatively quickly. The coffee was hot. We ordered right away because we'd been looking at the menu while we waited. The employees, the servers were engaged, the bussers were engaged. They were friendly with us. They were friendly with each other. The food came out. It was hot. Entrees were anywhere from $12 to $17. So, not that expensive of a restaurant place. The place was immaculately clean. Everything, the floor, the walls, the tables, everything was clean. And we enjoyed ourselves. We paid our bill. And I looked at my wife and I said, "Oh, sweetheart, this was such a fantastic experience." And then I looked at her and I said, "Isn't it weird that would have been normal 4 years ago?" Mm. See, that was the weird part, is I was excited about what used to be normal. My expectations were actually really basic.
That's
right.
Yeah. And I think that that's a hard thing, right? We've as a society have settled. There's so many things that we've settled for just because of an excuse of, well, this is, there's a lack of workers, there's a lack of X, Y, and Z, but that's okay. That's fair. But what are you doing with what you do have today? And how are you running your business?
So we went back a second time because as a person who likes systems, who likes processes, who coaches businesses, right? I had to go back and watch more specifically. And I watched the trainer. I watched somebody training a server. I watched somebody training a busser. I watched the manager circulating, tapping people in the back, congratulating, high-fiving, helping. I Googled them and I found out that they pay 15% more on average than anybody in the marketplace for all their positions, servers, bussers, managers, and everything like that. So you can't tell me that this cannot be done, right? They have a system in their kitchen so that the food can be created and delivered in 6 minutes. There wasn't a lot of detail in the article about that, but they have systematized the kitchen kind of in an assembly line fashion. But yet it felt homemade, tasted homemade, was hot. It was good. So my whole challenge to everybody listening is I believe to a degree, recessions, lack of employees or good employees is all in our head. I think we could do this. All right. Now, circling back to the slides, again, Amber, I keep putting off talking about enhanced service. It's not like I'm avoiding it, but I'm kind of setting the stage here. Again, this perception that we line up, an oil change after an oil change after an oil change in our shop, right? And we then look for cheaper and cheaper and cheaper help to do oil changes because oil changes are not profitable. We open late, like I said earlier, we open on weekends and things like that because we think that's what the consumer wants. And so the way we're behaving in the industry right now is not profitable. Mm. How much time does it take to drive a car around the block, bring it in, put it on a lift, on a hoist, lift it up, do the service, put it back down and drive it out again? Why couldn't we, rather than doing 1 hour per car, why don't we do 4 hours per car or 3 hours per car, and technicians only working on 2 cars in a day or 3 cars in a day, right? Because technicians hate all that rushing around, just doing small jobs all day long, right? Just the one thing that the customer asks for, which then leads into, a lot of what I coach and train about how to fix that, right? How to systematize that. So let's go into enhanced service a little bit, and then I can elaborate a bit further on some other coaching that I can give people to get them to be able to provide this, all right, if they're not already. So what is considered enhanced service? We're going to go with point number 1. And that is the ability to make an online appointment request. All right. So I am aware of some chains, especially tire chains or franchises in the United States, that are creating scheduling that people can access through their phones. They can actually go to that company's website and choose a 2:00 tire changeover appointment, right? That's not what I'm talking about. I don't want to get even involved in that. I can't imagine operating a shop with customers accessing my scheduler. I personally think that that's way too stressful to run, and it gives people the wrong impression. Are you able to access your dentist's schedule? Are you able to access your lawyer's schedule? Are you able to access? None of those professions are even remotely close to ever allowing anybody to do that, because they are a professional service. You have to book with a receptionist. You have to wait for the professional who then looks after you. I believe that we need to behave like those professionals need to be. So what we're looking at is on your website, there needs to be a button that says appointment request or make an appointment request. Your client clicks on it, and it takes you to a place where they fill in their name, their car information, their concerns with the car, and they press submit. And then you get an email at the shop telling you that somebody would like to make an appointment. You email them back, and then back and forth, you negotiate what works best for both of you. I've got a spot available here on Thursday. I've got a spot available Friday. The client says, I prefer this or I prefer that. And after a couple of back and forths, you've placed them where they need to be. All right. Now, let me elaborate on a couple of things technologically. On a desktop, if they're looking at your website on desktop, that button should be near the top right hand of your website. All right. It has to do with how our eyes use screens. It's very interesting dynamic. Apparently, we start in the left-hand corner, we then go to the right-hand corner, and then we go to the bottom left, and then we go to the right. But our brain only catches up with our eyes at the top right-hand corner.
Well, and then even further that, right? We usually only scroll to the second fold, if that. Like,
correct.
Consumers don't scroll much more.
No, right? In fact, that button should also have a link on your Google Business profile, because many people, when they search, are only going to your Google Business profile. They're not even going to your website anymore. And if you have a make an appointment button on your Google Business profile, which is the same button, right? It's basically the same link. People can go straight there. They're not even going to your website, right? Your Google Business profile is, I believe, actually more important than your website in this day and age, the way people are using it. And then on a mobile situation, of course, they're probably in your Google Business profile already. If they do click on website, that button better be at the very top of your device, right? And your phone number should be at the very top of the device, as well as on the right-hand corner of desktop. And ideally, that phone number is hyperlinked if they actually made it to your website, so that they can just tap it with a finger and make that call. So part of it is just using technology to that part of it. Now, when we talk about making an online request, have you guys noticed that people use phones less to talk to each other, especially the younger generations?
Yeah. Well, I think we got away from landlines, right? And now cell phones, and they're being spammed, right? And I think that has a huge part to it.
Right.
But
so people they're trying to avoid using that. But here's the other part of it. For those of us that still use phones and still call out, what happens when I call a shop? What's the chance that I'm going to be put on hold? There's a very good chance I'm going to be put on hold. Huge chance I'm going to be put on hold. So what does my brain do? I'm going to search for mechanic near me, or brakes near me, or service near me. And I'm going to see that I can make an online request. And I'm like, perfect. That's what I'm going to do. Because I'm a very busy person. I'm at a desk. I'm working away. I'm a professional. I don't want to be tied up on a phone, holding a device or putting it on speaker and being on hold while I wait, while I'm doing other work. I'd rather be able to quickly fill some information in and make that appointment. And here's the cool thing. I've seen different products, different services like software that do that for shops, different websites and stuff. And some of them actually autofill if you've been there once before. Mm-hmm. Right? Isn't that amazing to be able to just put your name in or put your phone number in, and the whole thing autofills? You just put your new concern or your new request in and submit it, and you've just streamlined it so much more for people. So anyway, so that's one of the first things of that part of it. So let's go to number 2, the ability to review and approve estimates electronically. So you're able to send people estimates via a text or via email, so that people can review those and then respond back again via text or via email. And if there's still people that like phone, or we need to go into a bit of a deeper evaluation, then maybe a phone call is appropriate if it's something that's a bit more complex, right? But again, it saves advisors so much time. But here's the beauty of it is all of this is happening in the background of that service advisor's day. They're doing other things. They deal with these situations. They schedule people. They send off estimates. They wait. They deal with somebody else, right? And they're not spending as much time on the phone. So All
Murray,
right.
we do have, I'm going to pause this really quick.
Sure.
We've had some really good engagement in the chat, and I want everybody to know that I do see that, and I will, if there's questions that come up, I will ask them either throughout or during. And I loved that everybody there, I don't know if you can see the chat, Murray, but
Yes.
there's a few that have responded as to why they rated themselves. So I think it's good to use that as context if you're okay with it. And then we had a question come through about
Okay.
what methods are you using to find out what your client's headaches are, right? So when we talk about understanding what experience that they're looking for, then he goes, do you custom tailor services to them as a result? So I don't know if that's applicable
Sure.
right now, but
Yeah. Well, I think my advice would be don't overthink this. We're going to go through the 5 things that are the kind of service that we're talking. I lost my train of thought again. Kind of service that we're talking about here. But so again, one of the general headaches is they don't want a phone be put on hold. So let's just assume that with most people, right? And then each of the points that I'm going to make will help with that whole thing about headaches. So yeah, you know what? Let's keep going through the slides, and I'm pretty sure I can answer that person's concerns for sure.
Awesome. All right. Well, I've gone to the next one.
Sure, perfect. So now we're going to go into video or photographic evidence of recommended repairs or services. So now this is DVI, digital vehicle inspection, right? So this is your technicians using a digital product. As they're going through the inspection, they're taking pictures of concerns. They're taking pictures of some good things. They're taking pictures of before and after, showing, what a good bearing looks like versus, the bad bearing that they've taken out. So there's backup in terms of what has been recommended. And even video, right? So some of these platforms have the ability to, you can grab that tie rod that's loose. You can actually shake it as a technician and take a short video of that. And then as an advisor, you can send that off to the client. So right away, one of the big challenges in our industry has been the need for transparency on the part of the customer. People talk about trust and they talk about honesty, honest shops. But to me, honesty just gets you in the game. Customers are assuming that you're ethical and honest in the sense of you're not going to rip them off. What they have a trouble with is what we call transparency. They feel like they are not given enough information to make their decision. They don't understand what you're talking about when you call them pre DVI, right? They don't understand the process of what goes on with their car. So we now have a way of showing them what is going on with their car. There's digital evidence of what's going on with the car. Now they can understand it. They can get a general sense of that component. So here's an example that I use in my training. Imagine, Amber, if you've brought your car into me and you're saying that the steering wheel feels weird, and we investigate it, and I call you back on the phone and I say, Amber, the control arm bushings on your car are worn. And you're like, well, what are control arm bushings? Well, Amber, control arm bushings are these rubber things that are part of these arms called control arms. And did you just, how long did you last? You just tuned me out within 10 seconds of me starting. Whereas I can send you a DVI with a close-up of the bushing. I can do a context picture. I can step back and show you where that control arm is in relation to your wheel. So you have a reference of geography there and go, this is what it needs. And you see the crack in that, and you're like, oh yeah, okay, please, right? Please replace it. So what's happening is it's giving us the ability to communicate technical things in a way that a layperson can understand with those pictures. So again, addressing that other person's question, I believe DVI just really deals with that concern for transparency, for understanding, for information. And the other part is that people don't want to make mistakes with their money. And if they're part of a relationship, if they're married and they're the one who's brought the vehicle in, they don't want to pay a $500 bill and go home and talk to their spouse about that and get yelled at about how they spent the money, that they got ripped off at the shop or whatever, because maybe the budget's tight that month or something, right? And so now both of the couple can actually receive the DVI and have a look and actually have a conversation on their own about it if they need to before they go back to the service advisor, right? Yeah. So I really believe it reduces stress for all parties.
Well, and not only that, Murray, but I mean, how is everybody receiving information these days? Right. By phone, they're looking at videos from YouTube, from TikTok, whatever the case may be. Yeah. We're learning. I mean, And we look at this generational change, and that is how the generations that are coming up, probably that 35 to 40% that we talked about earlier that is looking for this type of experience that are now becoming more dominant as the customer buying. You have to understand their buying and how they receive information, right? It's just like back in university or college, right? And you had I used to do nutrition, so I went through all organic chemistry and all of those things, and look where I am now. Used that really well. But it's kind of like an expert who has done this for so long that it's just second nature for them to roll this off of their tongue. And it's just like you're saying, calling a customer and being like, this is H2O times 10 or whatever it is. And it's, chemical molecules, all of those things. And you're like, what? And you ask a question and it kind of comes back to like, why don't you know this? Well, of course they don't know it, but how can you break it down so that they can understand and how just viewing it on technology is really the easiest way to do that.
Yeah. Well, during COVID, I had a few clients on rare occasions would consult over Zoom with a shop customer. They would send them the DVI, they would send the estimate, and then when they would have sent a link to a Zoom meeting, because it just, for whatever reason, it felt like they needed to share screens and chat this way. And I'm surprised that we're not doing more of that. I am aware of 2 shops that remain contactless in Canada. Their doors still do not open. Everything's done contactless. I'm aware of a couple of companies that are now getting into virtual sales. They sell things online, and then they do virtual service advising, and then they recommend a shop to get the actual work done. And I'm thinking to myself, why not having a Zoom integration where an advisor can send a Zoom link to somebody in the DVI or in that and have a quick Zoom? I tend to be very relational, as you guys could probably tell, Amber, because you and I will talk all day long if people will let us. And people will want to have a phone call about something, and I make it a Zoom call 99% of the time. If I can make it a Zoom call, I make it a Zoom call because I can see the person's face. We can get to know, like, and trust each other. And even if it's 5 minutes, I find Zoom faster than a phone call because whatever, holding that device there or having it on speakerphone, but having my headset on, I can concentrate on the conversation. I feel Zoom is actually more effective. Now, I don't know if anybody else is recommending it, but I'd be curious of people who might like that. I do know of one shop that has their own custom DVI built with their own software that they had built. And that technician does a video as they walk around the car. So not only is there a DVI pictures, but the client actually gets a video of the technician talking while they inspect the car, which I find is a very interesting approach. So again, this, I think, goes on to really helping people. So let's go into that next poll here before we go on to any more content.
All right. Do you send digital updates to your clients throughout the day on their car and its service? I would also even go to Murray, ask you, should you be doing a DVI on every single car that walks in?
Yes. Now, let me elaborate on that. Every vehicle, every time, should receive some form of inspection. You might have a simple tire repair, right? And on those, we did lights, wipers, all the tires, the horn, and the crankcase oil level, right? Those are 5 safety things, and the crankcase oil, because what happened to me one time years ago, and we didn't do these digitally because I didn't have it back in the day. We did these on a little piece of paper. We had a little checklist. But somebody left after a tire repair and their engine light came on and their engine blew, and they wanted to sue me that since I did a tire repair, now their engine blew. Now, it all went away. My insurance company told them to take a hike because that was unreasonable. But I thought to myself, you know what? That was a negative experience for me. But if I think about it and put myself in my client's shoes, in this day and age of self-serve gas and people aren't checking their own oil, why wouldn't you add checking the crankcase oil as part of your service for anything minor, right? And then I think after that basic one, I think every other car should have at least a 15 or 20 point complimentary. We're talking 12 minutes. We're talking 15 points, 20 points, right, to inform them of key things of their car. Then we go into a maintenance service. Now, I don't use the word oil change anymore, Amber. I think you and I have talked about that. I just believe in maintenance services. And maybe I would do a 35 to 50 point with my maintenance service. I teach level 1, 2, and 3 maintenance services. So a level 2 is now 100 points, and a level 3 is now like 150 or 200 points. That's a really in-depth. And of course, the package level of what I charge for that significantly goes up as I do more. So this idea of doing DVIs for free, like all kinds of time, I don't believe in that. I think we should give a little bit away for free, and then we should get paid for the rest. Now, technicians listening to this are going to say, there's no way that you're going to get me to stop at 5 points. There's no way you're going to get me to stop at 15, because whenever I stop at a few things, then right away I get asked, did you look at this? Did you look at that? Or I get blamed that I didn't look at something, right? So now technicians are worried about covering their butts, right? They feel liability, and they feel like Murray's putting blinders on them. Well, in the digital inspection and paper inspection that I teach, at the bottom of the complimentary, line 22, there's 22 points in it. Line 22 is recommend full digital inspection, right? And then it's the job of the advisor to present that to the client. So listen, our technician has identified 3 items of concern, but before we help you with any other decisions on your car or any repairs, we should do a complete workup on this vehicle, identify all of the concerns so that you can actually budget and plan and make sure that we don't repair one thing and then come back with another thing broken that's of a higher priority, right? And making that presentation and getting that. So, and as soon as that, and then if a service advisor, if the client says, no, I don't want it, service advisor documents it that it was declined, the technician is fine.
I love that. Well, it's just building that layer of trust, right? I mean, you are the expert, so you have to build and uncover, right? I mean, you do the same. You talked about the doctor's office, the dentist's office. They do the same things. Like, there is no difference in the services. It's just they hold themselves to a level of expectation, right? And we should be doing the same.
How are we doing with the results on this poll?
Yeah. So it's interesting. So 40% and always, 40% I try to. There's about 20% of us that say never. So a little bit of a split between always and I try to, which I think is fair. I think I was expecting that. I did have somebody say I would like to do it more, but being a mobile, I show them as I go, which that makes sense. But still there is that liability piece, right? The after the fact. And then after the work is done, then what, right? Did you document what you've done? And I think that's really where that comes into play.
Yeah. The other part that is not really in the question the way it's asked or in this section, but it's triggered a thought in my mind with what I see on the screen here. And that'll help that one person's question about people's headaches is what people want is status updates throughout the day. They don't want to be micromanaged, but they want status updates throughout the day. And I have found, and I was taught this by some advisors, I didn't do this at my shop, but I was taught this by some advisors, and I now pass it on to other people, is that an hour and a half to 2 hours after the vehicle is dropped off, even though the vehicle has been left for the day, they check in with the client and they update them on, we've started the work, we'll report soon. The technician, the specialist needed for your car was a bit delayed on a different one. They will be starting right after lunch. We still are going to have your car done by 4 o'clock. What they found was, rather than waiting for people to call, because people would leave the car all and say, yeah, I'm leaving it till 5 o'clock. And within an hour and a half, they were phoning back going, how's it going? Like, and these advisors, rather than get frustrated with why people were doing that, thought, oh, you know what? They're nervous. They want to know how bad is it going to be, right? And so with digital now, with texting and email, you can do that. Hey, here's a status update. Here's a status update. And that calms people down. They realize that there's progress has been made. They understand that somebody's going to reach out to them soon, that the estimate's being created, the inspection's done, but we're not finished the report, right? And just keeping people up to date on the progress really, really helps calm the whole thing down. So I think that removes a lot of headaches. And here's the thing, the phone stops ringing because now you're dealing with it proactively, right? Yeah.
Well, I think it goes into, and I'm going to say it, I don't know if everybody can see what Vic Tarasik said, but we trust what we see. So DVI versus unseen is better, the verbal expectation. So he's basically saying in the absence of communication, people think the worst, right? So having it documented, whether you've already communicated that, is really what people will go back to, right? Because they can always view what you've said, and they could be in a different place when you spoke to them, and what they heard is not actually what is accurate. And going back to your example, you know, you and I talked, I just spent a pretty penny on a transmission, and, you know, it's always the unknown. Like, I have no idea what goes behind doors of a mechanic shop, right? I know the front, the business end, but I don't know what's behind the scenes, right? And so the updates, right, through technology and modern technology, the service advisor was sending me pictures of your your car's in surgery. And, throughout the day, I will say, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts, they overpromised when it was going to be done, and they gave me a definite date, and that was not the case. And so talk about experience, like that experience is where you went wrong, right? Because now I'm expecting, and now if you're not giving me updates and I'm not getting that timeline that I think, right? I think it should be X, Y, and Z, but I actually have no idea. I've never worked on a car, right?
Yeah.
But as a consumer and as an experience, I am expecting it to be done. So you should be giving me an update in a certain amount of time.
We need to under promise and over deliver, and we need to under promise by a large margin and learn to be comfortable with that. Because what we're trying to do is, when Amber says to me that long, then my tendency is then to push back the promise time faster. And yet, even though she'll deal with her frustration of being without the car that long. But if I now promise it earlier and it doesn't happen, now she's going to be even madder, right?
I mean, I went 6 months without the car. So what's 2 more days? But you put a timeline on it. And so now I'm going to follow up with you.
So guys, if you want to reduce your client's headaches, it has to do with what you promise.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Eduardo says, I was taught to call at 10, 2, and 4 to keep them in the loop.
Yes.
I've heard that before.
I
Today
love
we can
that.
email and text. And text
10, 2, and 4. I love that methodology. I've heard of that before as well. So yeah. And now with technology, now maybe we can do a bit of a flow, right? Depending on where our clients' cars are. But I love that discipline of 10. And I've even known shops with multiple advisors. Like once you get 2, 3, and 4 advisors, man, it's easy for the wheels to go off that wagon. And they have a meeting at 10 and 2. They have a huddle. Okay, how we doing? How everything else? Do we have to cross over? Do I have to help you here? Right? And they do a huddle at 10 and 2, and maybe even one at 4 to see where everything's at. Right? Yeah. Make sure that everybody's on the same page. So let's go on to the next slide and talk about. Oh, sorry, Amber.
No, go ahead. You're good.
Oh, you know what? I did have one thing that I wanted to say. Pardon me, but you can leave the slide where it is.
Okay.
Different brands of DVI present or think of how it should be used, right? Then they come out with training and coaching with their product. And, some brands say, send the whole estimate out with the pictures all at the same time. And I'm going to tell people that that's backfiring a fair bit. I think it's important to send the pictures and the information, have all of the estimates ready. When the person contacts you back, then walk them through the estimate and walk them through their priorities, because you might not know who you're dealing with. So you might be dealing with a regular who says, yeah, get it all done, all $4,000, just go for it. When will the car be ready? It'll be ready by Friday, whatever. You've got a segment of clientele like that. You have other people that are more budget conscious, or they're new to you and you don't know their financial status. And so then what you want to do is inform them of the first items with prices, and then inform them of the secondary and third items without prices, and then have a dialogue around how much they want to get done. That way, you might have a $4,000 estimate, but you start off by presenting 500 to 700, work through that, the safety issues and the urgent issues. Then you talk about the other things that could be booked down the road, and then people will be like, nah, you know what, let's just get it all done, right? Or they'll be like, oh, I appreciate you working with me on this and making me have a plan. And so then by doing that methodology, you can be gentle or assertive depending on what feedback you're getting in that conversation. So that would be my opinion. Now, ride sharing and courtesy vehicles. People are beginning to use Uber for business accounts, which I think is amazing. If you have that in your marketplace, saves you from having courtesy vehicles. If you're going to have courtesy vehicles, that's great. One of the things that JD Power and Associates reports where the aftermarket can get more competitive with the new car dealer is advertise your courtesy cars by having them marked, having your website, phone number on them. I know some shops actually have them fully wrapped, but letting people know that they're available would be something that's there as well. And then that leads us to the next slide, which is kind of related.
Yep, there you go.
Valet customer service or vehicle service. So there's still shops out there that since COVID are still continuing to pick up and deliver. Just talking with a service advisor yesterday, and of course, the owner of that shop is a client in coaching. His advisor says that they do it and they charge $30, and people are happy to pay to have the vehicle picked up and delivered. They have extra staff like junior porters and stuff like that do that work. Now, this leads into a conversation about your clientele. We, as blue-collar people, generally blue-collar automotive technician types who then go into opening up our own shops, we tend to circulate with blue collar folk, and our initial clients generally might be blue collar folks, friends, neighbors, and stuff like that. Guess what? A lot of blue collar people can do their own car work to a degree because they're plumbers and electricians and drywallers, and they will do a lot of basics on their car. And so when they run into a problem, they come to your shop because they can't solve it. And guess what? They begin to question your price, and they begin to be some of the hardest people to deal with because now, they're stuck in a hard place that they can't do their own work because now they've got a check engine light they can't figure out or whatever, right? But what about, the symphony orchestra in your city? Do you have any of the professional musicians as clients? How many of you have university professors as clients? How many of you have rocket scientists as clients? How many of you have doctors, lawyers, and accountants as clients? How many of you have attracted the rest of society to your shop, right? Based on what do they see? Where do you think these people go with their cars? Do they care about knowing how to fix a car? No, they just care about convenience, right? Removing their headaches. So here's what I'm talking about. I'm not a rocket scientist, okay? So let's not go down that path. But I am a business professional who works in an office. It happens to be my home office in this case. And I would love nothing better than to be able to have somebody pick up my truck, service it, send me estimates, email, text. I can do that in between sessions, my coaching sessions, stuff like that. Reply back, pay the bill, and then have it delivered, washed and cleaned in my driveway. I would be now, would I pay a separate fee for that? Maybe. A cab ride from the shop, I'm that far away, a cab ride is $45 one way. Yep. Right? So maybe you add $30 to my bill, or maybe your brake jobs are $50 more than everybody else's brake jobs, but you do that, right? We just had, we have chosen a shop, the people are lovely and they are trying, but we just had our winter tires taken off and summer tires put on. And my wife loves her little Volkswagen Tiguan, and the wheels were not cleaned after, and it's like, well, and the shop says, well, we're just too busy to wash the tires. I said, well, then charge more and wash the tires. Slow it down a little bit, bring on more people, charge more and wash the tires. You'll get more people because I'm going to tell my neighbor, hey, guess what? We had a changeover over here. Look at how the wheels turned out when we got it done versus now. I'm not going to brag about it because they came back dirty, just like they were from storage, right? So anyways, folks, there's this 60% of people, probably I'm going to assume many of them are business professionals who car repair is an inconvenience. It's not about the price of the work. It's about being without that car or having that car dealt with while I'm busy, because I might have a different car. We have 2 cars in our home. Worst case scenario, we can share it for a day or two, get our duties done and stuff like that. So huge encouragement around that one.
Another one, because I'm using a very recent, like I said, I just got my transmission done. And so my shop, because I've chosen a shop that I like and I trust, and they've shown me good work so far, is probably about 20 minutes from the house, right? And so I had to go get an Uber to get to the car afterwards. And so that was an added expense after I had just spent so much. But had it been in a service, right, I wouldn't have even thought twice about it, right? It's just like, oh, they're doing this for me, but on the back end, I'm actually paying for it, but it doesn't seem that way, right? It's just an added experience. Then I had to get a tow truck. And so thankfully they had preferred vendors that they used and they supplied for me. And then you get a discount through those guys. And so it's just thinking through, like, I don't know a towing company that I could have called. So thank God they had somebody for me that they trusted. And it's just those types of things that you have to think about.
Yeah. Many of you listening are able to, through your business relationships, purchase roadside assistance at a very low price. Right. So you might be able to buy it through your parts company, through your warranty company. You might be able to buy it through the oil company that, the oil that you buy, the brand of oil that you buy might have these programs that are out there. And so I'm recommending to my clients that you don't necessarily charge the customer separately for it as a separate line on the work order, but you say, my brake jobs come with 6 months of roadside assistance, or my transmissions come with this, or a set of tires comes with that. And at the end of the day, you should be able to make 2 or 3 more percentage points on your tires by adding something that costs you only $13 to $20 to actually offer that. And you show the client that you register the person for them. You give them the 1-800 number. You tell them that they have roadside assistance now, and it's part of the value. So that's just one more headache that you've taken away from them that they don't have to think about.
Yep.
So just watching the time here, Amber, I know that we've got one more slide, and then we have a really important poll here. Online payment ability. So whatever technology is available that can do this, where I can get an email or something on my phone and I can click on it, I can pay through Google Pay, Apple Pay, I can pay with my credit card, can be processed that way, or e-transfer. For those of you that want to save a little bit about our credit card fees, making it easy, and by saying for e-transfer, click on here. Now, Amber, is e-transfer a common thing in the United States yet, like in Canada?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we have like Zelle, so it's through my bank account to bank account. I don't know if that's the same thing, but
It's
no.
probably. So we have something in Canada called e-transfer, which works through what's called our debit cards up here. So for the Canadian audience listening, using e-transfer saves you that 2% or whatever convenience. One of the things to make yourself more convenient, if you're going to accept e-transfers, is to make auto deposit setting, because like most Canadian banks have this thing called auto deposit, which then reduces the need for the client to put a secret word and or a secret word and a password to send the money, right? Even though it takes me 10 seconds to think up of a question and to think up of the answer and type it in twice, I love it when somebody that I'm paying has auto deposit where I can just go click and it's done and the money's gone, right?
Yep.
So
yeah, we don't really have that. I mean, it is more for like just like I pay my babysitters that way, right? But that's different. And because if I pay them through Venmo or whatever, PayPal, those types of things, there's fees that are associated with it generally. But most cloud-based management softwares have their own payment systems included, right? Where like with AutoLeap, you can text to pay, those types of things.
Beautiful.
So there is that convenience there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, let's have a look at this. I think this is our last poll, right?
It is. We are going to pop that up. Do you think using technology to communicate with your clients loses the personal touch? I was going to bring this up earlier. I'm glad we brought this up. Oh, I like that. I think it depends. And that is where most everyone, can you see the results, Marie? I don't know if you're
I
able
can't.
to.
No, I can't see the results. Sorry.
Well, the majority, more than almost 70% of the audience says, I think it depends.
Okay.
There's about 25% that say no, and less than 10% say yes.
Okay.
So we're mostly at, I think it depends. And I think that's, I was going to dive into that earlier, but I'm glad I didn't since we had this poll.
So do you want to dive in now? What are your
thoughts? I would love to dive in. I think, look, we're all trying to streamline businesses and efficiency. That's why software companies are coming out, and this isn't uncommon, right? In every other industry, technology has modernized businesses for efficiency, right? We are behind in this industry. Now, it may not seem like that because there's so many different technology companies out there, but it is still piecemeal, right? There's a lot of plug and plays. There's a lot of these things. And so we are still behind. And I apologize if you hear my dog growling. And so I wouldn't say, Steve, stop. I wouldn't say that we're behind or that it loses the personal touch. I think it just helps you automate your day to day and helps you give the consumer what they're looking for. Now, you can still have a personal touch in the text message, right? Of like, hey, your car's in surgery, or, those nice touches, like you make notes within your shop management software of like, this person's mom just, passed away, or whatever the case may be. And that's a terrible example. I don't know why I came up with that, but you can send them a card. There's still so many ways to utilize your technology to benefit personal touches, right? It's just an added step in your relationship to help facilitate that.
Well, Evelyn brought up, I think it depends on how tech savvy the customer is. And this is something that we didn't touch on in our prep session, which I think I'm so glad she brought this up, is yes, I agree with her, but here's the thing, is we can facilitate this by telling our clients what to expect and asking them what technology they have. So for example, in my training over this topic, if you're going to join the world of DVIs, the first thing that you need to do is, as you greet your client, as they come in the door, everything's going to be the same in terms of if it's a physical presence there. And they're going to, it's going to say hi, you're going to greet them, and then you're going to say, hey, listen, we have this new program, and let me show you a sample of what it looks like. So then you show it on a device, a tablet or on a phone, you show them in the place. And so you're going to be receiving a text and an email, or both. What would you prefer? And then what you do is you send them a test, just like that restaurant, like Butterfield's did to us. They sent me a text, so I knew I was on the waiting list. I hate going to restaurants that tell me they're going to text me, and I don't know whether they're going to text me or not, but whether they got my number right, right? I'm stressing because maybe they typed it in wrong, right? And so and then you send them a test, and then you ask them, depending on the brand of DVI, is please add me to your contacts. And that way, whenever a text comes from your shop, it will say that it's coming from that shop, right? And so you've dealt with all of that ahead of time. You've told the person what's going to happen, how it's going to happen. You've confirmed that they've received the test. And so now they can free leave their car and go, peace of mind. And then when they receive it, oh, boom, now they know that's coming from your shop. Because sometimes if you don't do that and you don't set up that contact card, they're going to get a text from a phone number they don't recognize, and they're going to block it. And they're going to consider it being spam, and then you've just shot yourself in the foot with that client, right? It's going to take a while to unwind that. So, yeah.
I agree with that. And I think too, it's one of those things, right? And I did put Murray's information up while we are talking so that you guys can jot it down. I'm not trying to rush this off, but think about when we used to go to the grocery, or not the grocery store, restaurants after COVID. What happened to the menus? They went to QR codes, right? And some of them are still in QR codes. So you're seeing this transition of like, restaurants aren't asking you if you're tech savvy, right? They're just doing it. And that's kind of where we have to meet people. And it's kind of those people that may not be tech savvy, but I bet you they're texting, right? I bet you they understand how to open up a text. And that's the minimal type of communication that you can have, because if a random number comes up, like you said, I'm not going to answer anybody that's calling me that I don't know, period. I just don't. And quite frankly, you can leave me a message and I'm never going to listen to it on my voicemail. So text me. And that's just the reality of where people are today.
Yeah. And again, for the few people that you have that are not tech savvy, that are senior citizens, that haven't, they're not going to join the technology revolution, there's all kinds of workarounds. Just use old school with them, and it's fine, right? We don't have to. I find that discussions on some of the Facebook forums are so black and white over this, and I love the fact that Rory put that, or you did, that it depends. I think is adaptable. We're going to adapt this to the client's expectations and things like that. And at the end of the day, a tech savvy person who's an IT specialist in the Silicon Valley is going to spend a lot more money on their car than somebody who's not tech savvy and who's just in a retirement home and maybe drives 3 miles a month, right? Like, not to be rude about that, we can still look after those people, care for those people. I had lots of senior citizens in my market area that we had. And here's an example of a headache that we had. They would come in and they would want to talk because they were lonely, and they would want to, have a coffee in my service area with me or my advisor, or they would want to go in the shop and talk to the technicians because they had nothing better to do. And that became a frustration. So I thought to myself, how do I deal with this? Well, you know what senior citizens like? They like free. So I did a deal with a coffee shop just a half a block away from me, and I got complimentary coffee cards, and I gave them up to $5 to spend, and they would run over to that coffee shop and visit with people there. Right. And so there's always solutions, right? There's always solutions to these challenges. So
I think that's so beautiful too, right? I think you understood your customer, and that's at the end of the day, like, this client experience is understanding who's coming in, right? And how can you do the most simple thing that's going to change their process and their thoughts in you, right? And that's what builds the trust, right? Yes, exactly. I'm coming to you because I already think you have good service, or you can take care of my car like you should, but what's the next step, and how do I keep you? How do we create that stickiness with our customer base? And it's in the experience.
Yeah. All right. Back at you, Chris. At you, Chris. I'm reading the chat. These are some people that know me that give me a hard time.
What did he say? You just passed your headache on to your neighbor. Hey, well, good.
Yeah, I paid my neighbor for that.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I appreciate everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Murray, as always, it's a pleasure to see you. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Everybody else on the phone, please have a wonderful weekend as well. The poll will come up when we end this, and we will have the recording out to you by early next week. But happy 4th. May the 4th be with you, everybody. Cheers.